Hey everybody, what's up? This is Chris back with the Bimmer Barn, and today I'm going to be showing you the 3 things that you should do first on your 335 when you buy one used. Now today we're going to be replacing these spark plugs, the oil filter stand gasket, which is a super common leak on the N54, and we're also going to be doing a walnut blasting procedure without any walnuts. So I'm going to take my intake valves from this to this using less than $50 in supplies from the local auto store. So without further ado, let's get straight into today's video. Alright, so we've got our intake manifold off. Now we're going to go ahead and spec the intake valves again. I showed you them in a previous episode, but let's go ahead and see just how bad they are. So this is intake valve number 1. You can see how badly it's coated on there. Around the intake runners as well as on the valve itself, there's just plenty of gunk buildup. So here's everything that you're going to need in order to do the intake valve cleaning procedure, and this is about $50 in materials here, but you're going to be able to reuse at least the tool. This is a $20 engine brush kit from Harbor Freight. It comes with a ton of different brushes. This is a microfiber. You're going to need a few of these and they're probably going to be ruined at the very end. This is some fuel injector cleaner. I bought this. It's the cheapest stuff from Advanced Auto Parts, but something like Seafoam would work as well. It's just this is like half the price. And also we're going to use a little bit of brake parts cleaner in order to do some of the light cleaning at the very end, the light polishing. So this is going to be a little bit more labor intensive than if you had a walnut blaster, but at least you're not going to get walnut shells everywhere in your garage and it's not going to make a huge mess, and you're paying a lot less for materials here. Now the first thing that you have to do before you start doing any sort of cleaning is make sure that you know which valves are open and which are closed. The easiest way to do this is to spray a little bit of brake cleaner or WD-40 into the intake runners to make sure that they're sealed up 100%. So I've got a little bit here, I'll spray it in. And you can see how the brake parts cleaner has pulled up at the bottom there, and it's clearly not seeping through or not leaking down. Now this valve is clearly open here. You can see where the shadow is cast and it just clearly drops off. That is literally the inside of the cylinder, and that's why it looks so dark. I can't capture it super well, but if I were to spray some brake cleaner in here, it would just go straight into the cylinder, so I'm not even going to try. Now when you turn the engine off, it goes to a resting position that usually has 2 intakes that are open and 4 that are closed. So go ahead and determine which 2 are open, and then what I like to do is take a bit of masking tape or a microfiber and put them into those cylinders so that nothing can get in while you're working around it. We've already done the 4 intake valves. Now I'm gonna go ahead and spin the motor over, and in order to do that, we have to reconnect the battery. So let's go ahead, reconnect the battery quickly, and I'll show you guys how to tap the motor over. Now to turn the motor over, you're gonna have to disconnect the fuel pump. Over here on the passenger side of the car, you're gonna go ahead and pull the seat up, and then there's 4 10mm bolts that hold the fuel cover in place. And then you can lift that out of the way and then pull the connectors off. One of them's for the fuel level sensor and one of them's for the fuel pump. Go ahead and disconnect both of those, and then we can go ahead and reconnect our battery and then turn the engine over. Go ahead and hope nothing blows up. So now I've got the keys and the battery's connected. I'm gonna go ahead and hop inside the car, put the keys inside the ignition, and tap the start button with my foot on the brake so the engine turns over. But then immediately, almost, I'm gonna tap the start button again so it stops turning, and it'll stop at a different position than it was before. So we can go ahead and clean the last remaining intake valves. Now that we look inside these intake valves, we see that 2 of them that were open before are now closed, and we have 2 different valves that are open. I'm gonna go ahead and spray some brake cleaner inside so we can just make sure they're 100% sealed, and then I'm gonna show you guys how we can clean it. So as you can see, intakes number 1 and number 4 are now open, and I went ahead and sprayed some brake cleaner inside number 6. That one is 100% sealed, and also number 3, which we haven't cleaned yet, and that one is 100% sealed. You can see it pulling up at the bottom there. So what you need to do in order to clean your intake valves is go ahead and grab a small funnel, put it in so you can fill up the valves with your fuel injector cleaner. Now, as you can see, we've completely almost filled up the intake runner with the fuel injector cleaner, and that is gonna start working almost immediately. It's gonna break down the carbon and the oil to something that's a lot more fluid and that we can basically wipe off with like a microfiber. So let's let this sit for a couple of minutes. While it's sitting, I'm going to grab a flathead and I'm gonna grind off the really hard gunk that's at the front of the intake runners so it'll fall into the channel there and essentially dissolve up. So now that we've scraped around most of that carbon buildup with our flathead, I'm gonna go ahead and use this wire brush tool to really polish up the intake runners and also try to just upset all the carbon that's at the bottom of the intake there. So let's go ahead and just scrub this around for a couple minutes, and then later we're going to soak up all this injector cleaner with a microfiber, and at the same time we should be taking all that carbon out. And now we need to soak up all that fuel injector cleaner that's in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with a little shop rag. And now to really clean it up, we're gonna use a microfiber and a flathead. I'm gonna just kind of shove one corner in there and try to compress as much of it in there as possible to soak up the fluid and at the same time get the gunk out. So here you can see that we've removed a lot of gunk, but there's still some in there. So while it's sort of dry like it is now, I'm gonna go ahead and use my flathead, get in there, try to scrape some stuff off. And then since it's already been loosened up with the fuel injector cleaner, this should really come out easily with just brake cleaner. And that's gonna be the final step before we clean it all up with the microfiber, and then it should be clean just like these cylinders. Check that out, guys. You can see just how much I was able to scrape off the sides, and it just turned into little clumps at the bottom there. I'm gonna use the compressed air gun to blow this stuff out before I put more brake cleaner in there to clean it up. So you can see with just some compressed air, fuel injector cleaner, microfiber, and some brake clean, we can get these valves really clean. And I'm not done yet. I'm just gonna spray a little bit more brake cleaner in here to agitate the last of the carbon buildup, and then we'll spray it out with some compressed air, and it should just take it all out really cleanly. And the last of this should burn off when we start the motor and we run it. So in order for me to not get any more gunk on my camera, I'm gonna go ahead and finish up the cleaning procedure, and then I'll show you guys the final results. So I'm very happy with how the intake valve cleaning came out, and I think that we're gonna see some better performance out of this motor. So now we're gonna move on to replacing the oil filter stand gasket, and that's held in by 3 E10 bolts. There's 1, 2, and then the third one is facing up this way. And then you have a 13mm that holds these lines on to the oil filter stand here. Now I'd recommend loosening the oil filter cap so that the oil goes into the motor and draining the coolant before you start this, and that should keep things relatively clean, but it might still get messy. So now I'm gonna go ahead and pull that off and replace these gaskets. So there you have it. Our oil filter stand gasket is installed, as well as the gasket for these seals right here. I didn't replace the O-rings for these lines, but that is generally recommended. I guess we'll see if these leak. It's not very common that they leak anyways. Now our intake valves are 100% clean as well. I'm really happy with how those came out, and I'm glad that we don't have to buy any expensive tool or walnut shells or make any big mess. Although I will admit we did get a little bit messy, got some splatter and a little bit on my face and the camera lens. And the last thing that we did was we replaced the spark plugs, and of course that's just basic maintenance that you should do on any BMW. So guys, that's gonna conclude today's video. Now if you wanna see this car start up, wait for our next video. We're gonna be working on the cooling system, and then we'll button the whole car back up and get it back on the road driving. Now if you wanna see more BMW content like this, go ahead and subscribe to the channel or leave a like on this video. Comment down below what you would do first on your 335 if you were to buy one used, and I hope everyone has an awesome day. Thanks for watching.